here. I'm willing to take the risk to get justice. So I'm putting the DHS and others who are not getting the job done, I'm letting you know. The gloves, baby, the gloves are off. And I'm going to do everything legally that I can and try to get the media's attention, the rest of the media, not just me, but I'm talking about people like CNN, NBC, MSNBC, Fox, you know, those big guys. And maybe the local affiliates, WTAE, KDKA, WPXI. You get the point? See, I'm not threatening you. I want you to make sure I'm not. I want you to be clear that I'm telling you that we are going to stop the abuse in this city. We're going to stop the abuse in this county. And we are going to stop the abuse in this state. And we are going to find a way to stop the abuse throughout the United States. Now, I'm making a bold declaration. I can't do it on my own. So guess what? I'm not going to do it on my own. I'm going to ask for Governor Rendel's help, the legislators, and Dan Honorado's help. But right now, I'm finally going to shut up for a minute. I'm going to turn it over to Annette Mendel.
Well, I agree that it needs to stop, and we can't do it alone. So we're really asking that the governor and the mayor and other officials help to end this abuse. And I haven't been abused by anybody, but I feel for those who have.
And now can you please ask Chris a question or two?
Chris, I understand you've been abused. So how did you deal with it, and how did it affect you?
Well, it affected me like in different ways. My father was very abusive in many ways. He was an alcoholic. And so how I was able to deal with it is through lifting weights and things like that. And also what I have done was got involved in a lot of programs and things like that to help me with that. And getting back to Al's comment about April the 14th, it's not a public meeting, it's actually a public hearing.
Well, thank you for correcting me.
And if people would like to testify at that public hearing, they can contact Bridget McNamee.
Can you give us a number for that?
Certainly, that's 350.
350.
3262, and that's number 2.
3262.
Yeah, 3262. In a public hearing, you have to call to get your name on the list. Also, at the public hearing, it's at 1 Smithfield Street from 4:30 to 6 p.m. on April the 14th at 1 Smithfield Street in the Homestead Grays room. Also, there are things we could do, like Al mentioned about the contacting Dan Honorado and also Ed Rendell. Another thing we could do is they are elected officials. They work for us. We are active voters. We are their boss. Remember that. When you vote, you decide if they are hired or fired. And if they're fired, it's your vote that gets somebody else in there. So we are actually voters. We are their boss. So therefore, you put your tax dollars to work. And by doing that, you contact Dan Honorado and arrange for a meeting in his office or having meet you at your convenience. Because after all, they are working for us. And there are laws on the books.
Chris, can you tell us, do you know of any of the specific laws that are on the books to protect the consumers?
There are what there's a grievance policy in place, and it goes into 3 levels. And the one level is when you're, if you're being mistreated by a staff person, you file a complaint, and as you do that, within 10 days, they meet with you and also the person that's you're filing a grievance with. If you're not satisfied with that level, then you complain to what they call the second level of complaints, and then it gets, and then there's it goes up to 3 levels.
Well, Chris, I have to interrupt because I understand what you're doing, but you're almost making it sound like the system's working. Tell us how the system isn't working.
Well,
with regards to what happened to you at a center located in East Liberty, roughly a block away from the police station, and that is owned by an organization that's making tens of millions of dollars. Please tell us how nicely you were treated due to your medical condition. Tell us about that wonderful story.
Well, I have severe.
And we will get back to the call as soon as we can.
I have severe leg problems, and also what I have is a blood disorder, and a combination of a skin disorder, where sometimes where my leg would get bumped and the skin would just rip, and sometimes it would bleed and things like that. One time it was draining real bad. It was heavily wrapped, and which, when it happens, is no control of mine. And where one time it was draining real bad, and when it drains, it also creates a foul odor, which causes the infection it's in there. But as it was draining, as it was heavily wrapped, it was, as I said, it was continually draining, where my pant leg was soaking wet, and the drainage was also leaking on the floor. I understand that type of a problem that occurred, but instead of them finding ways to fix the problem or help with the situation, they asked me to leave the center.
Let's be clear on this, ladies and gentlemen. We have 3 calls, and Chris is going to answer the very first call, followed by Annette, followed by myself. But first I'm going to make this comment, so please hold the line. Let's be very clear of what Chris just said. Chris has many medical problems, physical. In fact, we're blessed that he's still with us. Not to scare you or anything, but we are. We're blessed that he's still with us. Chris was essentially forced out of a center that is paid to empower consumers or people that need help. They're paid your tax dollars. They are paid money from the county because they are subcontractors or what have you. Ultimately, you're paying and supporting mistreatment and abuse. He has a medical condition he cannot do anything about. They kicked him out. But Chris, now before we get to the callers, we have to tell them the good news with regard to the other center, that the same thing happened, but what they did and how they did the right thing. Let's tell that. If we're going to talk about the bad, we got to talk about the good. Let's tell them the good.
Well, the agency that I was with was located on 900 block Penn Avenue. I don't want to give their name.
No.
But that's, where at the time where I was involved with them, there was a staff person that was a licensed LPN.
Licensed practical nurse.
And they knew about, I told them about the supplies that I had at the house, and so they told me if I would keep the supplies, an average supplies, keep them supplied of the things that I needed. She said that she would be willing to change the bandages and do what they could to do, so I could able to volunteer at that agency. So the corrections were made. I got the stuff, kept them well supplied, and then when it started to drain, she changed it before it became a drastic problem. Before the pant legs, even got them gloves, gave them all the bandages, everything that they needed.
So in other words, let's get to the calls.
They made accommodations.
Let's get the calls. Now, before we do, they made the accommodations. So what that tells us is that the first one over in East Liberty, about a block